Welcome everyone, thank you for joining me for the Foundations Pre-Release Guide. If you are a new viewer to my channel, I hope to earn your sub today. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back, and please be sure to hit that like button for me. As always, if you have questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll answer them. But yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's just jump into this set. Foundations has a lot of different products that they are releasing. A lot of cards only appear in certain products and not in others. This guide is meant for pre-release, so I am only covering play boosters and cards that are found in play boosters for the sealed or draft experience. If you're looking for Jumpstart or information on the starter collection or information on the beginner box, those products are things I'm not covering in this video. I'm literally just going to cover what you're going to find and expect at your pre-release, in your sealed pools, and when you draft. The 10 major archetypes in this set are classic. So one of the things that Foundations really did well with its set design is that it brought in the basics of Magic in a non-basic way. So every single color pairing and every single individual color is actually doing what it's most known for doing. It's not really throwing any curveballs. So if you've been playing Magic for a long time, you're going to already know how to play the green deck, or you're already going to know how to play that white deck. If you're new to Magic, it's quite easy to start learning Magic through these cards because what you learn here and the skills you learn here will be useful for every single other set you go on to play. I don't think any of these major archetypes are surprising. Obviously, blue-white flyers is always a thing. Blue-black self-mill graveyard control is always a thing. I think black-red raid is one of the few curveballs in this set. I think more traditionally people think of black-red as sacrifice. Here we're doing raid, but you can also play sacrifice with raid, and we'll get into that later. Red-green power is basically referring to 4 power or greater on the creatures and having benefits and payouts for that. Usually you're looking to ramp and have some haste going with that kind of deck. Green-white being +1/+1 counters is also, yes, there's a lot of that, but really when I think of green-white, I think of going wide with a lot of tokens and a wider board state. So I think it's a bit of both in this set. White-black life gain is classic, just like spells. Blue-red spells being classic. Black-green morbid, I think in this set, black-green's a little bit more of just the elves deck than morbid, but there are certainly morbid payouts for both black and green cards. Red-white aggro is going to be exactly what it sounds like. You're going to look for a lot of 1-drops, 2-drops, haste, goblins, cats, go wide, pump up your board, win. And then green-blue ramp really just indicates more of a controlling game to get to the big endgame spells where you have the biggest thing on the board. So because it's Foundations, they just printed directions on the cards. So we don't really need to go over set mechanics, and they're quite simple. So I'm just going to skip that section for this video, and we're just going to go straight into colors. First off, I think every single color can be played as a monocolor deck and do really well. There's enough synergy throughout each individual color that it is okay to just go like mono white or mono green. There's also a planeswalker in each color, and the planeswalker does a pretty good job of calling attention to what is this color trying to do in general. So if you were going to go mono white, what are you trying to do? Well, you're trying to put 1/1 counters places. You might be trying to fly. You might be trying to do a little bit of combat tricks. You're probably going to go wide with some tokens and some cats. It kind of hits and hints at everything that white wants to do within this set. White for this set has really 2 predominant tribal themes. One being cats, where you're looking to go wide with a little bit of lifelink payouts. And of course, there's a pump spell that cares about cats. Or angels. So some angel payouts, some angel ramp, looking to gain life as well with the angels. That's crossing over between the two. And finishing off with just big flying things. If you've never played Magic before and you've never played an angel deck before, traditionally angels really want to be paired with the early game being ground creatures. So going with an early game that's cats and then your late game's angels is perfectly reasonable and acceptable and kind of the way you want to play an angel deck. It's pretty unusual to just have only angels and get enough commons and uncommons to facilitate that kind of build in Limited. The top end angel enchantment card, Valkyrie's Call, is really good with some of the top end white creatures that care about ETBs. So anything that has an ETB is going to be amazing with this card, especially something like Guarded Air. White also has a handful of commons and uncommons that facilitate both the Cats and Angels decks that are neither Cats nor Angels. But for instance, Healer's Hawk is an outstanding 1-drop in white. It's flying, lifelink, 1/1 bird. Same with like Resolute Reinforcements, just a really good way to put 2 bodies on the battlefield. Dauntless Veteran, tax in, pumps your board. Sunblessed Healer, some nice recursion, and also some lifelink. Inspiring Paladin, if you have any 1/1 counters at all, it's just an incredible card at 3-drop. Cathar Commando is a very flexible, good white card that you can use for removal or just as a creature to trade early. And there's one out-of-place dinosaur at the top end of white. It's okay. If you need white filler, it works. It's not great. 2 power or 2 mana cost or less is always a theme in white. There's 2 cards in this set that reward you for playing more cards with those themes. But let's move on to flicker value in white. The Pup. Mischievous Pup is one of the best cards in this set at uncommon. With so many planeswalkers, especially in sealed, knowing that you can flash this out to save a planeswalker that's being attacked at, put it back in your hand, it comes back with all of its loyalty counters. It's just an incredible turn. You basically take your opponent's attacking turn away because of course they're going to attack your planeswalker. And you get to save your planeswalker and make it stronger potentially on the next turn when you cast it back out. So Mischievous Pup is good in many ways, but especially with stuff like planeswalkers or creatures with great ATBs. It's just a good card. White has its normal removal suite. It's actually some of the best removal in this set. At common, Vanishing Light's great, Rebuke's good. I've always been a fan of Make Your Move being at instant speed. I do think that matters. Joust looks okay. It's not great, but it's okay. Same with Stroke of Midnight. It's okay removal. You can blow people out at instant speed with blocks occasionally, but they did change the way that blocking happens in that you don't assign order anymore. You just assign damage. So I don't know how Stroke of Midnight will play out now that that happens, but we will see. Maybe it's better. Day of Judgment is also just your classic white board wipe. White also has a few ways to give yourself hexproof, indestructible at instant speed. There's even a upscaling kicker, Divine Resilience, that can basically protect your whole board if you'd like, which is pretty cool. One thing white is a little bit light on for this set are combat tricks. So both of these can come in at instant speed and act as a combat trick. And yeah, this is it. Pretty light for white. Normally you see a few more combat tricks. There's also 2 cards in white that I just don't ever recommend playing in sealed unless you open like 7 or 8 Heir Apparents. It's probably not a playable card. And then Authority of Councils is also, it reads good, but it's very specific. And unless you have a really great life gain payout deck, it's not necessarily as great as it reads. They didn't print too many multicolor cards in this set, and I actually think that's a good thing because it allows you to focus on the basics of each color individually before deciding, do I want to go into this other color for the payouts? But even though there's only a few multicolor cards in the set, the ones that are there are really good and do support the color pairing that they are in very well. Heroic Reinforcements has always been an outstanding card. Swiftblade Vindicator can be a really good threat, especially if you start equipping it up. For green-white, we have lots of 1/1 counter synergies and pumping your board. Great with the cats, it goes great with the elves. Playing cats and elves together with a wide board seems like a winning combo. White-blue flyers is a thing, and it does have some ways to go ahead and flicker your creatures for extra value, so I do think you can play ground creatures for flicker value as well with these, but when you play flyers, you're really looking to control the board state, and you're playing white and blue control with a flying win con because you're able to keep your opponent's board clear, you're able to tempo them out. And these creatures do a great job of helping the flyers push in more damage. White-black life gain is a trickier deck to pull off in sealed. I think you can. You need to have a lot of really good balances between your payouts and your enablers. And it also requires you to draw well. Like, you have to know how to mulligan a lifelink deck. Because if you don't have life gain and you have all of your payouts in your hand but none of your enablers, you might not have a great start hand. So it's a little bit more of an advanced deck, but it's still a very viable build in the set. In fact, I think all the builds are viable. So that's kind of one of the cool things about it being so fundamental, is that they all are pretty great decks if you have the right cards to build on the synergies that they want you to do. Let's move on to blue. We have Kaito as our blue planeswalker. Kaito wants you to draw a card and then discard a card. So it wants you to fuel your grave, trigger draw card triggers, wants you to go through your deck. Basically does everything blue wants you to do in this set. Its ultimate is an emblem that whenever anybody casts a spell, you create a 2/1 ninja token. So there's the win con. A little bit of a storm win con. For this set, I think most of the time when you play blue, you're going to be really focusing on your card draw engine value, your flyer win con, and your tempo of controlling the board. And all of these things play really nicely together. You just have to know how to do it. And I think blue, for a newer player, tends to be one of the scarier colors because it's not as obvious of how you win with the tempo cards. But I encourage you to play it and try it out because the card advantage is real, the tempo is real, and you can actually just pull away with the game and win with a bunch of little flyers if you do it correctly. In this set, they give you plenty of payouts for drawing extra cards. They give you plenty of enablers, and they also give you nice ways to tutor up more spells if you're trying to go for extra value and spell casting. The control is decent with Essence Scatter. Fey Bloom Trick is actually a really nice flyer tempo card. Refute, countering a spell, drawing a card, discarding a card, very classic blue. Runaway Together. I mean, all of these things are what you think of when you think of blue tempo. Aetherize. And the reason why you play blue tempo is so you can either just win with your flyers or you get to your big endgame win cons that are like Krakens. Sometimes you'll want to play a creature like the Aegis Turtle, just a 1-mana 0/5 to buy yourself time against those aggro decks. That's why they print these types of cards so that you can do the cool late game big blue things. Traditionally blue, you want to watch your opponent play and then react to it. So cards like High Fae Trickster are absolutely overpowered. It's one of the better rares in the set. I really like this card. We've got a classic reprint in Time Stop. Tolarian Terror is just a broken common in any spell slinging deck. And there's also just some good big blue cards at the end. Some better than others, obviously. But if you can get to the late game and get something like Extravagant Replication going, it'll win the game by itself. Blue also offers 2 enchantment removal cards. These are pretty standard. And they also threw in some prowess creatures. Most people, when they think of blue, they do think of blue-red and going for spell slinging. And I think that's quite good in this set. But keep in mind, that's not the only way you can go spell slinging. You don't have to be blue-red to play spells. You know, white-blue flyers with control spells is equally viable. Blue-black spells, control with graveyard synergies is incredible as well. And last but not least, we have the green-blue spells deck, where you're really just looking to ramp and tempo out your opponent so you can actually land a 7-drop and win the game. If you're feeling extra spicy, Muldratha is an incredible card with lots of endgame value. So if you get your mana right, and your fixing right, and your ramp right, and your control right, you can get all the way to this card and then just win the game off of its value. Moving on to black. We have Liliana, Dread Horde General. This Liliana is one of my favorite Lilianas, so I am quite partial to this card. Personally, I just really like zombies decks, or I used to. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card. It's pretty incredible in any sacrifice deck, or really in any deck, period. But the uptick is where it's at. +1, create a 2/2 zombie creature token, so it protects itself. -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. Usually, you're looking to have a wider board state, or you're okay with sacrificing your 2 creatures for their 2 creatures because you have a way to outpace them because you're going to be making an extra creature every single turn when you uptick her. So, just a really good ETB. Let's get rid of your threats, and then I'm going to start winning afterwards. And then -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Well, that's basically just GG. So, what does she say about black? Well, we're looking to do zombies, graveyard recursion, value, sacrifice, removal, control. Black also has a discard theme, so you can definitely go towards the discard synergies if you'd like. There's some nice zombie themes in terms of recursion and sacrifice, with some good enablers and good payouts. I think one of my favorite rares in the set has to be the Abyssal Harvester. I think this card just does so much, and it is easy to overlook, but it is exile target creature from a graveyard, that's any graveyard, that was put there this turn. That could be during your opponent's turn. Let's say they discarded a card, and you made them discard a card, and they discarded a creature. Well, you can tap the Harvester, as long as it doesn't have Summoning Sickness, and create a token that was a copy of that creature. Or if you're playing a control deck and you remove a creature with a kill spell, you can immediately tap this and basically steal the creature. Not only that, but it's repeatable, so we're looking at new sacrifice fodder almost every turn if you build your deck right. Black has a lot of really good recursion, and they leaned heavily into it for this set, and I think that's a good thing. Fake Your Own Death is going to be a really good combat trick. If I'm playing black, I think at least one copy of Fake Your Own Death is probably reasonable to throw in. There's quite a bit of self-mill, and newer players tend to get a little bit freaked out about self-mill, but it's actually quite good if you get used to it and you go there with it. And then black has its nice suite of removal, as always. There is a pretty heavy life gain, life loss theme through the black archetypes. Mainly, you're going to be looking for like white-black with these, but I think they can go into almost any deck, and they're still just good cards. So don't limit yourself to only lifelink decks when you're playing these types of cards. Phyrexian Arena, great value. Don't worry about losing the one life. The extra card will more than make up for it. And of course, it wouldn't be black if you didn't have the big top-end flying demon that did something cool. And searching your library for a card and putting it into your hand is about as cool as it gets. So awesome top-end rare. As touched on earlier, I think a lot of people, when they think of black-red as kind of the go-to, and they do sacrifice. In this set, it's raid. You can sacrifice in these colors still. It's just really they're looking to give you benefits for raid with the signposts. There is quite a lot of lifelink, so I think, white-black is pretty well supported if you have the right pool for it. Blue-black is something I highly encourage you giving a try to if you've never done Threshold. It can be really good, and Consuming Aberration is a very good card. And obviously, the more you self-mill, the more powerful a card like Muldrotha gets. The last black deck is the Elves deck, and I think this is much more of a green deck, splashing black, than a true black deck. I think if you are going black-green, like I said, I think you're going to be leaning more heavily into green than you are to black. But there are some elves and some things that you can do with these cards in black as well. Moving on to red, we have Chandra, Flame Shaper. Yeah, it just does everything that red wants to do. We add mana, we get to look 3 cards deep, you get to play a card that turn. You can also just create a token of a creature you control that has haste. You'll sacrifice at the beginning of the end step. Yeah. Sacrifice, haste, token, check, check, check. And then the -4 is 8 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalker. Fantastic burn spell. Red doesn't really surprise us too much with this set. It's very classic red. Burn spells either to face or to creature. Make sure you read the difference before putting the card in your deck. We've got 2 combat tricks, which again is a little on the light side, but it's fine. Sure Strike is quality. Some Rummage and Thrill of Possibility. This is a great card for an aggro deck for when you run out of action. You can just keep digging instead of having to sit there and flood out with your lands. There is a Goblin build in the set, and it's quite good, just like the Elves build and just like the Cats build. It's pretty well supported. You can definitely do an aggro, low-to-the-ground Goblin deck where you're really focusing on haste, menace, evasion, attacking in. Goes well with raid, goes well with soldiers, goes well with group pumps. You'll want to be attacking in when you're playing red. It's a very aggressive color. They did print some support for red spells. Some of these cards are quite good. But more importantly, in this set, they went with like old school big red as well. I don't remember the last time there were lots of options to play big red creatures or big red endgame. But this set definitely has it, where there are many viable, very large dragons, dinosaurs that you can ramp into for red. So that's pretty cool to see that classic red big versus small making its way into the set. And of course you can play a little bit of both. They did reprint a very fun win con. If your opponent is attacking in a very strange way and they are playing red, and they appear to be getting you down to exactly 10 life. Just be aware this card exists, and don't let them get you to 10 exact life. Maybe go down to 9 instead. We've already gone over Boros, but yeah, Heroic Reinforcements, Swiftblade Vindicator. Red-white aggro is always going to be a good thing, and this set's no exception. I think you should give a fair shake to red-green, though. 4+ power matters is a thing, and haste and trample, and this set does have some very big creatures that are very good in green to get up to, and in red. So I actually think, like I said, big red is back, and red-green likes to go big, so I'm excited to see how this archetype in particular does. Blue-red spells is a good archetype, but also just pretty tricky to pull off in sealed most of the time. But, you know, if you have the seal pool for it, you'll know, and you can go for it. And of course, you know, we already covered it, but there's also the black-red raid deck that you can also play Sacrifice with. All right, let's move on to the final color, but definitely not least, green. Vivian Reed is the Planeswalker, and we get to look at the top 4 cards of our library, reveal a creature or land from among them, and put them into our hand. Put the rest onto the bottom of your library in any order. It's basically just a really awesome fetch at +1. You can also have removal for artifact, enchantments, or creatures with flying, which is extremely relevant. And of course, the ultimate is an emblem where your creatures get +2/+2 and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. I mean, it's basically I win the game. And green in this set is quite the color. I think these rares are really great. There's ways to go and fetch more creatures. You're going to want to be pretty creature heavy in green, but that's just classic green for you. The elves are the real deal in green. You can play mono green elves. We do have the pieces there, and most of them are at common, so it's pretty good odds that your seal pool might actually have an elves deck that's viable. And even the uncommon elves are really great. The elves deck looks pretty generically good and pretty easy to assemble if you get enough of the commons. I still think that you're going to want to play black with your elves, especially if you have Lathril, but I also think that, you know, obviously you'll be heavier green than you are black if you're going that direction anyway. If you haven't ever played elves, usually with elves you want to be ramping up to big things, and there are a lot of 4 power matters cards in the set, and they're pretty decent and good things to ramp up to. I mean, playing a big dinosaur after you've ramped with a bunch of elves is a thing, and it's a good thing to do. So they've definitely provided green with some real chonkers. Speaking of chonkers, there's also Doubling Season and Quilled Great Worm. Yeah, this card looks bonkers. It's mythic for a reason. That's an incredible card, and it's any creature dealing combat damage during your turn. So play this in your first main before you attack, and just swing in. If you curve out into this on turn, wow, that would be a turn. There's also just a handful of other cards that enable both 1/1 counters and big things than green. So you start getting a lot of crossover all along the curve. There are some great cards to be able to put 1/1 counters places, go big, get bigger, keep growing, keep going. Speaking of 1/1 counter synergies, even Snakeskin Veil, one of the best tricks, and definitely one of the best tricks in this set, also puts a 1/1 counter places. Felling Blow puts a 1/1 counter. It's a removal spell. At common, you have Bite Down. Excellent. Broken Wings, I think, is very playable in sealed. Bushwhack, really great fight spell or fetch a land. And there's a few other ways to ramp in green as well, or fetch more cards. I do want to take a second to talk about Overrun, because even though it's triple green, it is one of the better green cards probably ever printed in terms of a win con. So if you're playing a heavy elves deck, you're going wide, you're making a bunch of 1/1s, and then you cast this, and you pretty much win the game. So, a Cats deck that's going wide would really love playing Overrun as well. Even, a Goblin deck with Overrun is disgusting. The card's just really good. So if you open it, it's at uncommon, and it's a legitimate win con at uncommon. Like, I know it's not rare, but it is a win con. And going more into monocolor or mono green, especially, cards like Blanchwood Armor reward you for going near monocolor, right? Green also has a few other ways to make your big things even bigger. I actually like Overrun more than these cards because Overrun gives trample where Preposterous Proportions does not give trample. And then the only green card that actually doesn't fit necessarily is the Wary Thespian. But, like, it's still an amazing 2-drop. Like, I would slot this in my deck. It's a cat. Maybe it wants to go in the green-white deck. But, I mean, a cat that surveils on enters and dies 3 power is great. It doesn't even matter that it doesn't have synergy with the other green cards. I think a lot of people playing elves are going to be really tempted to go into white with it. And I think that's a good home. Obviously, you know, 1/1s getting a counter when they ETB is extremely relevant, or being able to pump them up even one more time. Board pumps are real, 1/1 counters are real, and, you know, combining them with cats, going wide, group pump, it's a winning combination. I think it's going to be really hard for you to play a green deck and not have some sort of elves, so I also think there's going to be some temptation to go into black-green if you get the signposts here. Red-green has some really strong cards, and like I said, the ramp from green pairing with the big red, pairing with the big green, it's kind of a match made in heaven. And if you get the right cards for the ramp, it's definitely a feasible archetype. And big green-blue, I think most of the time when you do play green-blue, you're looking to have a green-based start, and you're kind of splashing blue for the end game, and then maybe you're playing Muldrotha as well with it. Okay, for as playable as green is, let's talk about non-playable cards. Okay, this card, I love 5-color as much as the next person, but this card is unplayable. It is unplayable in limited, it's unplayable in sealed. I don't care how good of a 5-color deck builder you are, this set does not have the support to land this kind of creature. And yeah, you might land it, but you're going to lose a lot more games having this card in your deck than you are going to win. On the other side of things, there's a mythic card of this set that goes into almost any deck. So if you open Sire of the 7 Deaths, yeah, I think I would put this in almost any deck. There's only a handful of decks that I probably might leave this out, and that would only be if I'm going for completely low to the ground aggro and trying to really focus on those 1 and 2 drops. But otherwise, this card slots into anything and it looks incredible. So be on the lookout for it in your seal pool. Artifact-wise, we got a variety of equipment, some better than others. But overall, equipments tend to be okay in more aggressive-leaning decks. There is some artifact fixing and ramp, some better than others. Solemn Simulacrum is a card that if you've never played with it, it plays better than it reads. It's an amazing card. There's a reason why it's rare. There's a reason why it's 4 mana. It's worth it every time. You would definitely put this in any deck that you play, no matter what color you are. There's also a few artifacts that are a little bit more particular and risky to have in your deck. Sometimes they could backfire in certain matches or just have a bad draw to line up with them. Ravenous Amulet is an interesting sack outlet that goes specifically in a black deck. And then they also gave us 2 uncommon, really classic artifact creatures, the Juggernaut and Meteor Golem. Both are fine, nothing incredible, but if you need curve filler, they're fine. There's 1 new land in this set, and it is a land that becomes a creature. Looks okay, looks playable. A whole run of commons that are fixers. Evolving Wild, Secluded Courtyard, both fine. And then Rogue's Passage to round it out. Rogue's Passage, if you've never played with this card, it just wins games. It's a great card. If I open this card, it's going in my deck. Anyways, that's Foundations. I want to thank you for joining me for my pre-release guide. If you like this, be sure to like and subscribe the channel. Leave a comment, because all of these things help my channel grow, help other viewers like you find my channel. There is no early access for Foundations, so you will not have a chance to watch me play with the cards before you go to pre-release, but the following week I'll be sure to post videos of me drafting this set. So I will see you then. Good luck and have fun.